The laughter rose first bright and careless, the kind of sound that makes a room feel warmer than it deserves to be. Then glasses touched, then the chandelier trembled in the reflected clink of money and approval, and my younger brother Ryan, stood at the center of it all, cheeks pink tie, loosened microphone in one hand like he owned the night.
"If it weren't for my brother," he said, grinning, rolling the words like dice he knew were loaded, "I'd probably be living in some shoebox apartment right now. He's basically my walking wallet. Always has been, always will be."
A slice of laughter cut across the table. A couple of cousins clapped quick, stupid claps, the kind you give a joke because everyone else is giving it one. My mother smiled the way people smile when they want to stop a car by staring at it. My father looked down and inspected the etched rim of his plate. And Emily, my sister, shifted in her chair and bit the inside of her cheek eyes, flicking toward me like a tiny flare no one else would see. I had a fork in my hand. It looked harmless, polished and simple, but I could see my reflection bent along the tines, a long, thin version of me. And before I realized I was doing it, I set the fork down, pushed my chair back, and stood.
"That's enough."
Silence is not silence at a party. It's just music without speakers. Everything still moves, but it moves toward you. Phones paused in mid-air, straws hung in people's hands. A waiter froze with a tray of little lemon tarts, and Ryan did a slow, sloppy blink, like his contacts had gone dry. "Relax, Nate," he said, laughing a little, the laugh that always bought him 10 more minutes of bad behavior. "It's a toast."
"No," I said, and felt my chest steady, my voice come home. "It's my life you turned into your punchline. I wish I could tell you the story began right there, at his 30th under a borrowed chandelier beside a tiered cake with his name written in gold icing like a promise. But the truth is, it began long before we could drink, long before we could drive, long before either of us knew what a bill felt like in the stomach."
When we were kids, I carved him a sword out of a broken fence slat, sanded the edges with my father's coarsest paper until splinters got bored and went to bother someone else. Ryan ran around the yard with that sword like it weighed nothing, like he was a knight, a pirate, a king. I would let him tag me on the shoulder and groan, fall into the grass, spread my arms, dramatic.
"You're the king, Rye," I'd say, panting. "I'm just the knight."
He'd grin like sunlight had decided to live in his face. "I'm the king," he'd shout. "Nathan's the knight." And I didn't mind. Back then, his joy felt like proof I was doing something right. Back then, sharing the last slice of cake, handing over the bike I'd begged for, giving him my place at the front of the line, those felt like little coins I could spend to buy peace. Mum would ruffle my hair and say, "You're such a good big brother," in that soft voice that turned sacrifice into sugar. Dad would nod once, quiet the way men nod when they agree, but don't want to be quoted later. It starts as kindness, it becomes a habit. Then an expectation. One day you wake up 2030 and the word for it is burden, but you've said yes so many times the word no has dust on it. Ryan figured out early that I was the person you called when a plan needed a spine. He took swings at things and I held the ladder. He started freshman year with a half-charged ambition to study something that sounded like computers and cool, and by spring he was telling me the professor didn't get his learning style. Cards posted themselves into his wallet. Delivery apps learned our door code. When fees piled up, I didn't let them fall, I paid. Just this once, I would say like a prayer. Just this once, I would say the next time.
Years layered. I kept 2 pairs of shoes by the door, one for the office, one for the bar. I learned how to nap on the bus without missing my stop. I stacked small kindnesses into a wall and called that wall family. It worked until it didn't.
The weeks before the party were a list. Venues that were too sterile, caterers that were too basic, a DJ who didn't get the vibe. Ryan wanted a night that looked like a music video and felt like a documentary about success. He wanted memory and proof. "It's the big 3-0, he kept saying, tapping the back of my shoulder with his knuckles like he was punching a button on a vending machine. "Gotta do it right." His card failed on the deposit. "Weird," he said, frowning at his phone like it had betrayed him. "Just handle it, and I'll sort you out tomorrow." Tomorrow, that slick little friend nodded from a distance.
"I handled it."
Emily noticed. Emily always does. She and I were packing party favors into little white boxes one night at our mother's kitchen table, the kind of chore the youngest forgets to notice and the oldest does without being asked. "You know this isn't normal, right?" she said, keeping her voice under the hum of the fridge. "Helping is one thing, but he doesn't say thank you anymore, Nate. He just assumes you'll be the net."
"I'm fine," I said, which is what we say when we're not. He's Ryan."
"That's the problem," she said, closing a ribbon hard enough to make the bow squeak. "Being Raya." I shrugged. It's easier to shrug than to change a decade. The hall itself was perfect in the way rental places can be polished, floors, 2 clean mirrors, lights that dimmed on command. People arrived dressed like they'd promised themselves they would be someone worth photographing this time. Ryan moved through them, shaking hands, half-hugging, telling stories, where he got to be the hero without ever getting blood on his shirt. My parents hovered at the edge of it all with the other parents, the ones who are proud in ways they don't know how to turn into sentences. I found a spot that let me see everything. That's a Big Brother thing. You learn the geography of a room, where the exits are where the danger might come from, where the best angle is if you need to step in without making it look like stepping in. When they called for speeches, the microphone went to a friend first, a guy who knew Ryan from the version of college that happens off campus. He told a story about a night where Ryan talked a bouncer into letting everyone in for free. Laughter, a chorus of, "Yeah, that's so him." Then to a cousin who cried a little and said God had big plans for Ryan's life. Then to Mum, who kept it short because she always has, and because people confuse brevity with humility. Then to Dad, who said he was proud in that tight way he says complicated things. And then it found Ryan. He thanked the crowd like a politician and waved the microphone like a conductor. He did the greatest hits. "I used to be wild. I'm getting serious now. This is my year." The DJ dipped the music. People leaned in, and then his eyes found me at the table, and he smiled. And of course, he said, lifting the glass just enough to catch the chandelier's glitter, "I couldn't have done any of it without my big brother Nathan. He's been paying for me since the womb. College cars, rent, you name it. My own perso." The laugh that followed wasn't mean exactly, but it was lazy and loud and hungry. The kind of laugh that feeds on dignity. I watched the faces, some amused, some uncomfortable, some pretending to be somewhere else. Mom's smile thinned. Dad examined the stem of his glass like it was a specimen. Emily's hand curled around her napkin and stayed there. That was the moment. Not the money, not the years, not the late nights and the early mornings. The moment was the look on his face. Pride. A grinning pride that had learned it could live on my back. I stood.
"That's enough," I said.
Ryan blinked, then laughed again. "Come on, Nate, don't be weird, it's a joke." "It's a confession," I said, and felt my voice settle into something I recognized, something I hadn't used in a long time. And I'm done being the punchline. You don't plan a speech for a night like that, not if you're me. You plan a sentence, just one clean and hard. But sometimes sentences grow a spine of their own. "I have worked 2 jobs for years," I said, not loud, but the kind of not loud that makes a room lean closer. "I've said later to my life so you could say now to yours. I have carried your emergencies like they were my choices, and I have watched you turn my help into your entitlement. That ends Tonight. Mom stood reaching toward the air between us as if she could catch the words and push them back into my mouth. Nathan's sweetheart. It's his birthday. I know what day it is, I said, and let my eyes rest on hers long enough to say the other sentence, this isn't about cake. And I know what 10 years is too. Dad cleared his throat. He's good at clearing it. He said my name like it was a wrong number. Son. Ryan dropped the grin. It's always there until it isn't. The grin is a door he can step behind whenever the weather changes. It closed. You think you're better than me? He asked. Chin up, shoulders back, old swagger, finding something solid to stand on. You think you're the only one who works? You think money makes you moral? No, I said. Boundaries do. The room had that feeling rooms get before a glass tips. 1 more inch and the tablecloth is going to be wet. I looked at Emily. She nodded once, a small nod, the kind you give someone who is about to jump and needs to know the water is real. I looked at my parents and saw love and fear and habit braided together so tight none of us could tell which part hurt most. I picked up my fork, set it down again, put both hands on the table like a carpenter measuring a board before the cut. From tonight on, I said, I'm not paying for your rent, your gas, your parties, your mistakes dressed up as lessons. I'm not taking calls that start with, bro, I need a favor, and end with my card on file. I am your brother, not your bank. And if you want to be a man, you can start by being one without my wallet. Someone at the far end exhaled like they'd been holding their breath since March. A waiter chose that exact second to set a bottle down, and the clink sounded like a punctuation mark. Ryan lifted his glass, then put it back, then lifted it again, then realized there was no play here he knew. Wow, he said, smile returning thin, now sharp. Okay. Mr. Boundaries. In front of everyone. On my birthday. I tried to do it quietly, I said. In my head 100 times. I rehearsed letting you down gently. But I think gently is why we're still here. Mom's voice cracked. We can talk about this tomorrow. Tomorrow is the day I always choose, I said, and tomorrow has been killing me. Ryan's stare slid to my father, then to my mother, asking silently for backup for the old net to appear. It didn't. Not right then. Maybe they were as surprised as I was to hear the sound of my voice when I wasn't using it to smooth something over. He laughed again, but there was no humor left in it. You'll be back, he said. You always come back. You can't help yourself. The sad thing was, he wasn't wrong. He just didn't realize he had run out of versions of me where that stayed true. I sat down, then stood again, because sitting felt like apologizing. I reached for my jacket. I pushed my chair in neat because neatness is how you say I meant it even to yourself. I looked at the cake, 3 layers. Gold letters, a crown of berries that didn't look real. I thought about little wooden swords and the way the kingdom had always moved to make Ryan comfortable. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't make a scene. I turned and walked toward the exit, and on the way, a cousin I barely knew touched my arm and said, "Hey man, he didn't mean anything by it." I said he meant everything by it, and kept walking. The lobby was cool. Outside, the night had that city smell, car brakes and rain that didn't fall. My hands shook a little. Anger will do that. So will relief. I took a breath that felt like my first in months. On the sidewalk, I remembered the time he told a cashier to put his groceries on my tab at the bar I worked, and how he'd grinned and said, "Banker man," like it was a cute nickname instead of a theft. I remembered the time I woke up at 5 to drive him to a can't-miss interview. He overslept and shrugged off. I remembered the way our mother used to say, "He's young, he'll learn," and how we had all agreed to that as if learning happened while other people carried you down the hallway. And I remembered the backyard, the wooden sword, the knight who kept falling on purpose so a small boy could feel like a king.
A soft thump behind me, the door opening. Emily! She stepped out, arms around herself, hair catching the spill of lobby light. "You okay?" she asked, and the words weren't the fake kind, they were the kind that ask for the real answer. "No," I said, and then yes, and then I don't know, but I couldn't stay in there and keep being the joke that made his story easier.
She nodded, pressed her shoulder to mine. We stood there, two people who grew up in the same house, learning how to say new things. "They'll be mad," she said. "Mom will say you ruined it. Dad will—" "You know Dad."
"I know," I said, "that they can be mad. I've been tired for so long it started to feel like a personality trait."
She laughed a little because that was true, and sad, and somehow still funny. "You need a ride?" she asked. "I walked," I said, "wanted the air to do its work." "Call me if you need me," she said, squeezing once. "Call me even if you don't." She went back in. I looked through the glass at the hall and all its light, and I imagined the moment after a person leaves, the way conversations break and reattach, the way blame looks for a lap to sit in. I didn't want to see it, didn't want to hear it. I started walking. On the way home, I passed the parts store where Ryan had said he might apply if things get tight. And I thought about the way he said tight, like a belt you could always loosen by asking someone else to hold it. I passed the diner where I used to pour coffee for men who carried night shifts in their knees. I passed a pawn shop and saw a guitar in the window, cherry red and implausibly clean. And I thought, what did the person who owned that guitar think when the cash bought them a week and cost them a year? At my building, I climbed stairs I'd paid for one rent check at a time. I unlocked a door that stuck a little in summer and breathed a room that smelled like whatever was mine soap books, the last meal I made myself. I sat on a chair that sagged in the right place, a sag that knew my weight, and I put my head in my hands and let the sound of the party drain out of me. I know the part where you expect me to call someone right then, to say I did it, to ask if I did the right thing, to ask for a certificate that says good job. I didn't. I made a cup of coffee that tasted like wood and old decisions, and I stood by the sink and drank it too hot, and I watched the steam curl like a small ghost that wanted out. When the phone buzzed, it was a text from Ryan. Just a string of question marks. Then, seriously, then you couldn't keep it together for one night. Then don't worry, you'll cave, you always do. The last one, a heart emoji, because even bullies like to pretend they're being affectionate when they take your lunch. I put the phone face down like a lid on a jar that needed to be closed. The quiet felt like a new kind of wealth. I know this is where part 2 begins, the aftermath, the knock at my door, in the middle of the night, the long Sunday with my parents' voices on the phone, the way a boundary learns to stand even when the house shakes. But tonight, part 1 ends the way the night did outside a hall that smelled like borrowed flowers, with a sentence I had carried for years finally out in the air where it belonged. This birthday ends now, I had said, and I meant it. Not just the cake and the music and the toast and the chandelier, the version of me that funded the king. That version got up, pushed in his chair, walked out into the street and kept walking. I thought walking away was the hardest part, but it wasn't. The hardest part came the morning after, when the sun rose and the world didn't care that I had finally spoken. The texts were waiting for me like tiny soldiers lined up on my phone. Ryan again, Emily, Mom, even Dad. A dozen messages stacked like accusations I hadn't asked for. "Call me. We needed to talk. You embarrassed him. How could you do that to your brother on his birthday?"
Only Emily's text was different. Just 3 words, "proud of you."
I sat there in the silence of my apartment, reading them again and again. I'd expected anger, maybe even guilt. But what I didn't expect was the ache, the hollow feeling that followed me from the kitchen to the bathroom, from the bathroom to the mirror, where I barely recognized my own reflection. For years, being the provider had given me purpose. Saying no didn't feel like freedom, yet it felt like losing a job I never applied for, but had worked every day. By Sunday, the call started.
Mom first. She always starts soft. Nathan, honey, your father and I talked. You were out of line. It was Ryan's birthday. You humiliated him. Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady. He humiliated me. He turned me into a joke in front of everyone. He didn't mean it like that. He always means it like that.
Her sigh on the line was long tired. He's your brother. Families forgive. That's what we do. And I almost laughed, because forgiving had always meant me paying again. Forgiveness had a price tag, and my wallet had always been the cash register. Not this time, I said quietly. I won't keep forgiving something he doesn't plan to stop doing. The silence stretched. You're breaking this family apart, she whispered, and it cut because she believed it.
Dad called next. His tone was different, practical, heavy.
Son, you should have pulled him aside. A man doesn't air family business in front of strangers.
I tried that, Dad. For 10 years, he never listened.
There was a pause, the sound of him exhaling smoke from a cigarette he wasn't supposed to still be smoking. Ryan's fragile. He's not like you. You're stronger. You can take it. I gripped the phone tighter. That's the problem, Dad. Because I can take it, you all decided I should. He didn't answer right away. Then in that gravel voice that never bent, he said, blood is blood. You'll regret this. And he hung up.
Ryan didn't call. He showed up.
Monday night around 11, a pounding on my door, 3 knocks too loud for the hour.
Nate, open up. I froze, staring at the wood between us. For a moment I thought about not answering, letting the silence do the talking. But silence was never my weapon. It was his.
I opened the door. He stood there, drunk, but not sloppy, just loose, like his anger was keeping him upright. You think you can just humiliate me in front of everyone? You humiliated yourself, I said. I just told the truth. His laugh was sharp. The truth. You think people care about your truth. They were laughing with me, Nate, not at me. You ruined the vibe. You ruined everything.
You turned me into an ATM, I snapped. You turned my life into your safety net, and I'm done.
He stepped closer, the smell of whiskey rolling off him. You're nothing without me. You know that nobody would even know your name if I wasn't the one people wanted to be around. You're just boring Nate, the guy who pays the bills. And something in me cracked. Maybe I'd rather be boring than pathetic. For the first time that night, he flinched. His eyes, narrowed fists, clenched, but he didn't swing. He just shook his head, muttered something under his breath, and stormed off down the hall. His parting shot echoed back, your cave. You always do. But this time, my door stayed closed. The days after blurred. Work, coffee, the same streets, but everything felt heavier. Mum's words circled in my head. You're breaking this family apart, and Dad's warning you'll regret this. But then there was Emily. She came over Thursday unannounced, carrying takeout, and a look that told me she'd already argued with everyone else. You did the right thing, she said, setting the bags down. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did. Doesn't feel like it at all, I admitted. She sat across from me, opening cartons of noodles. You think boundaries make you selfish, but they don't. They make you human. You've been bleeding for him so long you forgot you're allowed to keep your own blood. I stared at her chopsticks, frozen halfway to my mouth. She smiled a little sad. You saved him 1,000 times, Nate. Maybe now it's time to see if he can save himself. The real storm came Saturday, 1 week after the party. A family dinner. I almost didn't go, but Emily begged me.
Come, she said. If you don't show up, they'll rewrite the story without you there. At least show them your side.
So I went. The table was heavy that night, heavier than the food on it. Mum barely looked at me. Dad's jaw was tight. Ryan sat there smug, smirking like he'd already won, like the script was in his pocket. Halfway through, Mum put down her fork. Nathan apologized to your brother. I set my glass down carefully. No, her face pinched as if I'd just cursed in church. Don't do this.
I'm not doing anything I said. I'm stopping.
Ryan leaned back, arms crossed, grin wide. See, he thinks he's better than us. He thinks he's some saint for finally saying no once in his life.
Once I laughed bitter. Ryan, I've said yes 1,000 times. That's the only reason you're sitting here now, but I won't do it again.
Dad slammed his hand against the table. Enough, both of you. The dishes rattled. The room went quiet. His voice dropped. Nathan, you were tearing this family apart with your pride. And there it was again. Pride. As if setting a boundary was arrogance. As if refusing to be drained meant I was the problem. I looked at each of them, Mom, Dad, Ryan, then at Emily, whose eyes begged me not to fold.
And I said the words that sealed it.
I'm not tearing this family apart. I'm just refusing to hold it together by myself anymore. Silence. Then Ryan laughed, bitter this time. No charm in it. Fine, be alone. See where that gets you.
I stood. Maybe alone is better than being used.
I left my plate half full, walked out the front door without looking back.
It's been weeks since then.
Ryan hasn't called. Mom sends clipped texts about holidays, never mentioning my name. Dad doesn't speak to me at all.
But Emily still checks in. She still reminds me that what I did wasn't cruelty, it was survival.
And maybe one day the others will understand. Maybe Ryan will hit the bottom I've been cushioning for years, and maybe then he'll climb. Or maybe he won't. But that's not my job anymore. For the first time in decades, my job is me. And if that makes me the villain in their story, so be it. Because for once, I finally get to write my own.